Okay, welcome. Today we have the second match of the championship round of season 2 of Calculation League. We have Wenzel, Grüß, and Aaryan Shukla. And today I have with me Professor Arthur Benjamin from Harvey Mudd and the mathematician, a prolific public performer who has given demonstrations for many years about mental calculation, mental arithmetic around the world. So right here, Wenzel Gruss, 27-0 so far in his Calculation League career. First match between them was quite competitive. So hopefully we get another good match today. Welcome, Professor.
Welcome, Sam. Great to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us. You can see they are going fast. So it is very difficult to narrate these kind of things because they solve things so quickly. So just a little background, if you don't recall, and for anybody watching, so obviously a lot of these answers are non-integer answers. For answers that are over 100 or less than a negative 100, they need to be correct to the nearest integer. If it's between negative 100 and 100, they only need 2 significant digits. They have a maximum of 5 attempts per question. If they do not get it right in 5 attempts, they have to wait for the timer to expire. 30 seconds per question. So we are already out a little bit more than a minute. They have both answered 7 questions correctly. It looks like Aaryan is about 7 seconds ahead of Wenzel in terms of solving the questions. So
say a little bit more, Sam, about what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. I assume they're they're not even allowed pencil and paper here, correct? This is
no pencil and paper. No typing intermediate results in the answer box. You have to purely mental calculation, and anything you type in the answer box has to be a legitimate attempt to answer the question.
So now, as they type, are they allowed to backtrack? Like, let's say you type something and you realize, oops, my second digit is off. Can they fix it?
Yes, they can.
Obviously, they're able to go right to left or left to right, I see.
Yes, they can. They can click the toggle text direction on the screen to type right to left, or they can click the shift key on the keyboard and it will toggle the text typing direction. They are allowed to backtrack. Yes, you can backtrack. The only sort of rule would be if you're doing something like adding numbers and intentionally not carrying the number and then correcting it every time. That's sort of not in the spirit of correcting the work. But I don't. These two wouldn't do that.
Right. Okay. Good.
So we are 3 minutes in. Wenzel has taken a slight advantage here. You've seen we have a variety of different kinds of roots. We have some new questions for this year. We have questions that are solving systems of equations, factorization, questions with mod. We have very unique exponents that aren't an easy root. They're something like to the 0.3 or to the 0.72 even. So we have it's a mix of questions. So far they are going pretty fast, but not as fast as last match, which indicates that it's probably around an average difficulty question. Aaryan here, I don't know if you saw that, how fast he went through that addition question. Aaryan is now doing additions. He can add numbers using more than 5 columns. So he can take, for instance, 6-7 digit numbers, and without breaking them up, just scan from top to bottom, adding all the numbers.
Amazing.
Which is it may be unprecedented. We've reviewing videos from Japan. They go very, very, very fast, but they typically stick to doing 3 or 4 columns at a time at a very fast speed.
Now, Sam, you yourself I've watched you add numbers, and I know you're at least doing 2 columns at a time.
Yes, I am doing 2 columns at a time. And what was interesting, and I posted an addition tutorial on our YouTube about how I approach addition. What was interesting is like my per addition time is almost, for 2 columns, is almost identical to when Aaryan does 3 or 4 columns. So I'm doing the same speed, but he is able to do additional columns.
Wow.
Which yeah, and he's very good at that. He did have his Guinness World Record video that has amassed more than 100 million views.
Wow.
Okay, so Wenzel has this question: 162 to the 3.4 power divided by a very, very large number. Now he's down to 1 guess, but he is disappointed that this was something he did not manage to solve. Aaryan with the same question. He solved it. He solved the question, and I know from talking to him, he does not use logarithms to solve those questions. He simply does 162 to the 3.4, and then divides. Well, so he's got another one here: 7777 to the 3.2, and that was easy for him. Cubing 7777 and multiplying it by the 5th root was not a challenge, and he's going to gain a lot of time on that question. He did it in a few seconds, and I'm not sure that Aaryan is going to be able to do it.
Now you said that there were new types of questions being introduced this year. At what point were the competitors exposed to the types of problems, like you say, oh, they now can have systems of equations to solve?
Yep.
Raising numbers to fractional roots. Was that introduced? Yeah, go ahead.
We put it in October, right? I did this update to the app in October. They had about 2 months to practice before the season started, and now the season has been going for 4.5 months. So they've had a good amount of time at this point. But as much time as I can be afforded, I'm not sure about cubing 7777, multiplying it by the 5th root it was like 2 or 3 seconds.
Just unbelievable. And yet they are they seem to be on pace problem for problem, but Wenzel has been getting more of them correct here.
Yes, and that is in our first match. I know that the person who was faster on the question, it was roughly 55% Wenzel, 45% Aaryan, which is pretty impressive. They did a large batch of 350 questions, and it was relatively close to 50-50 in terms of speed. But it is true that there are a category of questions that Wenzel is able to do rapidly and Aaryan is not. And that ends up producing the advantage. And Wenzel has quite an advantage here. We are 8 minutes in, and he is up 24 points.
Wow. We could potentially, if at this pace, we could be done in another 10 minutes.
Yes, I have to think that Aaryan will close the gap a little bit, or at least maintain. It's really hard to evaluate what that means, or whether Wenzel is doing very, very well, or Aaryan simply just struggled on a couple questions.
Mm-hmm. Now, last year, Wenzel was the winner, and was it? Can you remember the time? It was it went the full 40 minutes, correct?
It did not. So it went 28 or 29 minutes, but we only had a win by 30 requirement. So he hit 30 in 28 or 29 minutes. We now have a win by 50 requirement.
Okay.
So, and they are both, it's hard to, it's hard to evaluate this or compare it, but they are both significantly faster than they were a year ago.
Wow.
In fact, we had a number of people, I think a little bit more than half of the comparison league were the same people. And these two are two of the most improved. I think they may be the second and third most improved. They just keep getting better and better.
And they're probably helping each other in that way. That is by knowing
Yes.
that you have a significant competitor that pushes you to do even better, you know?
And see, I think Wenzel, he's smiling. I think he just looked at the score for the first time this match and realized that he has quite a lead. What you said is absolutely correct, and I think it's interesting in that, you know, I think people can push much further in doing arithmetic than has really happened, just because of the lack of opportunity, the lack of sort of incentive to do so. We've seen it in the memory community that people have dramatically increased like the records for memorization once they introduced sort of a highly structured organization that hosted competitions. You know, what people have been able to do in those memory competitions recently makes what the records from a generation ago look, you know, not very impressive by comparison.
Wow. Now, now this is the second year of the Calculation League, which you run, Sam. Has participation increased? Tell me a little bit about that.
Participation is increasing. I would, you know, I'm struggling admittedly to try to get meaningfully increased participation from the USA. Sadly, it is the most difficult place to find interest. But in India, in Europe, participation interest is definitely increasing. I will say I think there are a number of people who I have talked to who their quality mental calculators or people, you know, arithmetic hobbyists, but when they watch videos of these two in particular, they sort of they
freak out.
they're like, this is this is not something I can do. This, so we have you know, we have a number of people who are very good. It's a little bit difficult to get people willing to participate when they sort of understand they're going to probably lose every match.
Well, so maybe what as I'm watching this, my thinking is in a lot of mental in mind sports and such, they do have divisions. You know, if you go to a chess tournament, well, it's not like everybody's put in the same field. They stratify them. Maybe if there was a stratification, then, you know, even in terms of the types of problems that are being given, you might be able to increase participation that way. I think if you were doing something, say, for, you know, by elementary school level and middle school level and types of problems, then you might appeal to the American audience. You know, they say, okay, I'm not competing against these superhumans, but maybe I'm, you know, have a chance. So.
And certainly, I think, I mean, it's the right idea. I will disclose that, I mean, the main obstacle to doing so is, you know, chess is going to be typically an in-person competition. When people play online, there's sort of an understanding that cheating is likely to happen. And so, like, in our competition, I watch every match. I'm there for every single match we have, just like this. And so I, you know, assuring the legitimacy of,
then.
Yeah. And I think I don't have the capacity to do that for you know, a large scale mass participation event. We do have we had a season 1 competitor who is American, and there's a season 2 competitor from India who both are more tech oriented than me, and they have their own mental arithmetic platforms that are more geared towards mass participation. Our season 1 competitor, Akshaj Kadavaru, is a recent MIT grad. He created Math Dash, which is used by the you know, math counts, by the art of problem solving community, by the IMO participants. So they sort of, I think, you know, I would like to see you know, more more efforts towards mental arithmetic and on those platforms, especially Akshaz's because it's American based. So hopefully that can happen. I mean, I think the perception some people have is like, well, arithmetic's simple, it's just adding and multiplying, and there's not, it's not much thought going into it. But if you see the questions that these guys are doing right now, this isn't simple, and this isn't just mechanical. There's a lot of strategy, a lot of quantitative reasoning going into the approach to these questions, especially on Wenzel's end. You cannot, I mean, you cannot solve these types of questions without having a high degree of quantitative reasoning. And Aaryan, okay, he's back. He had a brief internet disconnection there. So yeah, and I think especially, for younger children, doing something that helps that develop that quantitative reasoning when they're younger will allow them to, approach mathematics from a more informed state when they're older. And yeah.
Now, what is Aaryan doing here? It looked like he kept trying various things. You have a sense as to I guess he just did his fifth incorrect guess. You think he was just trying different rounding, trying to get the last digit correct?
I'm not sure. I would not be surprised he lost his focus there when he had the brief internet disconnection, and so he sort of struggled on his right when he came back. But it was a difficult question. That A times B times C divided by D, and the numbers on the left were not so small.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the security measures that are taken. Like, I can see there's someone sitting behind Aaryan.
That is not a security measure. I'm sure both Aaryan and Wenzel have their fathers in the room. But that is not. I mean, the security measures are, number one, I'm watching. We've done like 300 of these now. I have a pretty good idea of what people can solve and what is reasonable. Number two, we have detailed stats that are collected. So when people's statistical profiles don't really make sense, that everybody's follows more or less the same path with maybe, when questions increase in difficulty, the speed should rise at a certain rate. I have recorded videos for all matches. If people have any sort of question about the legitimacy of the match, I can send it to our board, which is these two and a few other people, and ask people for their opinions and whether they thought it was whether there was potential cheating there, or whether that was a credible solution. Competitors are free to request a video of a match they were in if they think their opponent maybe didn't do something fairly. It's not a significant issue, but it's inevitably can happen. In both seasons, I removed one person from the league for cheating.
Interesting. Okay.
So the first season was it was a very poor attempt. The competitor cheated against me because he didn't believe anybody was watching the match, which was true because I was competing. But that didn't you can't. It was obvious when somebody's twice as good in one match as they are in every other match. So, and we have a video afterwards, which I don't think he understood, which clearly showed that he was cheating.
Oh, sorry to hear.
Yeah. So Aaryan has this question on the screen. This is a hard example of a system equation question. Can you imagine solving this question? You can have paper or pencil. It doesn't really matter.
I swear.
So solving that in 30 seconds.
And are they? are they using, I don't know, Kramer's rule, something? What?
That is extremely difficult. I have seen Wenzel solve those types of questions in less than 30 seconds. I just don't know. I have no idea.
It looks like Aaryan is, oh no, well, looked like he was taking a break on a problem, like saying, okay, I'm not going to get this one, and I'm just going to, but he did. He moved up.
Yeah.
He was just thinking. Wow. And
And
are they sometimes the answers being typed so quickly that we're just not seeing them?
in Aaryan's case, yes, his internet delay in India, it is possible for him to type a question so quickly that you wouldn't see it. For
Right.
Wenzel, it's very rare. His internet is fast enough. I don't. It doesn't really happen. But yeah, Aaryan, an easy question he might type fast enough. So we are. I mean, Wenzel, the lead has stayed about the exact same. We are more than 20 minutes in. So Aaryan has held even since the early period.
And we're about a little over 20 minutes in.
Nice track.
It's we occasionally hear Wenzel exclaiming joy or frustration, and
Frustration. He's got it. So he's got one here. 56,092 square root divided by 82,306. And he was easily done by the time I finished talking. He's got another version of it here, slightly easier version. That wasn't difficult either. Now he's got 434 to the 2.9 power. Let's see if he can do that. Yes, it took him a second guess, but yes. Oh, and I didn't even get time to. He cubed that this some of those numbers very quickly. He's making it impossible for me to try to narrate what he's doing.
I just can't imagine. Just can't imagine. To what extent are these competitors willing to discuss their methods? I understand they want to keep a competitive edge. Are they willing to discuss perhaps some of their easier techniques, even for things that are that they feel wouldn't be giving a lot away?
So for Aaryan, he is willing to discuss fast, pretty much everything. I did do a 90-minute interview with him where he discussed the basics of a lot of it. He hasn't. There are definitely things that he hasn't discussed that would be really interesting, but he's more or less sort of using, on most things, he's using an approach that you would guess he's using. There's not much in the way of secrets there. In a lot of cases, through repetitive practice, he may have a sense of like when a shortcut can be used. Wenzel, he has interesting methods. His approach is very unique. To date, nobody has been able to get him to significantly share those methods. But
there must be methods, right? It's not like somebody who truly is getting these answers out of thin air.
No, right. He's not getting them out of thin air. Whether he has sort of methods that are strategically valuable, or whether this is simply a combination of extreme numerical memory plus brain processing speed plus muscle memory plus quantitative reasoning, and it really cannot be replicated in any sort of meaningful sense. I'm not sure. I don't know whether his methods have sort of a teaching value, or whether it's sort of he is just phenomenally unique. I'm not.
Now,
but
go ahead.
I mean, to my knowledge, and I don't know if you have something to add to this. I cannot find any sort of a story, whether it's modern or historical, of a Western competitor who appears to be on Wenzel's level. And I mean, I haven't been able to find it. I mean, you can find like individual feats, but individual feats often look like they relied on a huge degree of memorization. And Wenzel is he's just solving everything that, I mean, these questions are hard, and you'll see that he's answering almost everything.
Now, these questions are automatically, and I assume somewhat randomly generated by your computer program here.
Yes.
Is that right? So
Yes.
the program makes no attempt to say, there is a clever approach to this. If you recognize that these numbers add up to those numbers, it's just kind of just random.
Right.
Here's a problem of the form A times B times C plus D divided by E times F, right?
Yeah. In the multi-operation one, there is some logic to, as you probably noticed, like we only have one division sign in there, and there's some very minimal limiting logic. But for the most part, we just have a list of like 3,000 competition question formats, and they just cycled through it. So if you're going to get factor a 7-digit number, it's just a randomly selected 7-digit number. It could be prime. It could have multiple factors that are, above 100. There's no real limiting logic that says, well, we need to make this question sufficiently difficult or not too difficult. They're just random numbers.
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
And I think in the recent last few months, we've learned more about the mental arithmetic community over in Japan, which I assume you have had some contact or knowledge of in your lifetime. I don't know if you have anything to add to it. I have had conversations with their top Sorbonne Academy recently, but we've struggled to sort of get significant interest from them in sort of competing with us. I know they have a really developed system over there. I mean, it is a mainstream extracurricular in Japan that a huge number of kids participate in, and they don't do the kinds of variety that these two are doing here. Mm-hmm. It's limited to addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and they're extremely good at what they do. But they don't. It doesn't have this sort of variety.
So it would be interesting, perhaps, if you offered a competition that only played to the skills that are being developed there, then you might have people more willing to participate if you were kind of restricted to, what you might call the Japanese version of the calculation league. Then they might say, oh, yes, now our people can come in and now maybe they already have such ways to test them that what do they need another way of doing it?
Right. And that is a huge problem. I think the children in Japan are, they have, it's constant competitions for them. They're able to do, a couple dozen a year. And even the adults have a number, several that they do every year. A Japanese only competition though.
And I don't mean only, I meant in terms of Japanese style problems. That's what I meant.
So we do have the, what's called the Japanese, they have a rating test where they give people dans. You might be a 10th dan Sorbonne master. And so we have the rating test. I made a simulator for it, and we have one on their website. So, I mean, these two are clearly 10th dan competitors at their level, at their format. But because of the difference, Wenzel would not be competitive with top Japanese competitors in their style of competition.
Oh, interesting. I guess that was what the question I was kind of getting at. Was there that limited to the Japanese style questions, there would be Japanese students who would be outperform these two. And yet what makes these two so incredibly impressive is the sheer variety of problems. As you said,
Yes.
there were like 3,000 different formats of questions that can be thrown at them. And that's, I mean, I'm not seeing either of them just throwing up their hands on any problem and saying, I can't do this.
Right.
You know.
Which is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. To just comment on that, Aaryan about the Japanese format only. Aaryan appears he is very good at a Japanese only format. He, from what I can tell, at his age, he is more or less like the equivalent, like would be record breaking for his age. And it is, but in Japan, because they take it so seriously, the standards increase. People keep getting better into adulthood, and it's sort of, you peak at about the same time an athlete would peak, which may be 25, 28, even 30 years old. So he is very, very good by their standards, and maybe has an argument that at his age he is better than anybody in Japan has been at their age in their format.
I see.
But they continue, there are a couple people there who have that 10 more years experience, and they're continuing to do it seriously. But I do not think that, from what I've seen, that they can show up here and do this format the way these two are doing it. Certainly, it would take a lot of practice, and that's why I don't think we're going to see them in the near future. Wenzel is getting close to 50 here. He is at 45. And they would have to put in a lot of effort, essentially just for the purpose of competing with Wenzel and Aaryan in this format.
Yeah, boy, it's so humbling to watch these two, and inspirational, really. Remind me how old they are.
Aaryan is 14 and Wenzel is 22. It's amazing to think about, but they still could get a lot better. And Wenzel has hit 50.
Here we are. Okay.